Hello, world. I'm beyond excited for today's guest. She's a groundbreaking innovator with deep marketing and communications expertise across multiple industries and geos. She's known for instilling passion in her teams for creating unique stories that turn trends and insights into campaign narratives, impacting the entire customer journey. And she's recently been recognized in PR Week's Women to Watch 2020, Top 50 Influence Marketers by Talking Influence, and Top Digital Marketers on LinkedIn. Please welcome Amisha Ghandi, SVP Marketing of Tipalti, to the show. Amisha, are you ready to get radically transparent with me?
I am ready to get radically transparent. I'm excited to be here too.
We're I think, excited, right? It's like such an overused word. So I'm trying to think like excited, exuberant, elated. I mean, we've just been counting down for this episode. So I'm just finally happy to be speaking. And I always like to throw my guests, as a first question, the warm up, if you will, before the curveballs start coming. But can you give us a brief look at your professional journey and what attracted you to Tipalti?
So I think when you think, when I think about my journey, it's not very conventional for, regular marketing. I started as doing research because I had, a degree in lab science. So I did that, but I also had theater. So I loved creative, left and right brain. I always have. And so I saw the marketing people having fun. So I leapt in and said, how can I do that for a living? They look like they're having fun. They're being creative. And that's where it really started. And I started working in a publication and, really doing very, database and, uploads and things like that. And then I moved into, and I got very lucky and I got into a startup that was becoming an online city guide to all cities in the US. So I got in there very early and I did almost every different job in marketing, including sales operations, advertising, copy, content. So that was a great foray into marketing. And from there, I went into agency side, into advertising, marketing, public relations, and I ended up after a while at SAP. And I had a lot of growth there. I started in their comms group. I did product marketing there, and then, moving around a lot. And then I eventually started influence marketing because I had done that when I was before SAP on the B2C side. Okay. I had done what's called blogger marketing, and you could really move product. And I always had that sense. So influencer marketing for me really means, how do you work with others that have influence and engaged audiences, right? And then how do you translate that in B2B? And how do you help it move the business and move people down the funnel? And then now I think of, influencer, it's not just influencer, but it's influence marketing. How do you influence the entire customer journey? So part of, doing that at SAP was I took apart the entire customer journey, which we know it doesn't just work from A to B. And in B2B, it's a longer sales cycle and it's hard to measure because there's so many influences during that time. But I really took it apart and got to meet with a lot of teams. So I came up with, hey, marketing is a puzzle and all those pieces need to fit together. And that's why I was excited to join Tipalti, is to bring, I've done almost every job at SAP. So, and then being a leader there, right? So I wanted to bring it all together. And I think this wonderful opportunity Tipalti happened. And so that allows me to bring these puzzle pieces together. And it's a growing company. We're scaling really fast. So there's a lot of movement and a lot of opportunity to build. And I love to build and innovate. And I think that's one of the best reasons I joined Tipalti. And they have a great culture of people and collaboration, which is also important. And that's why people stay at companies, right? So I was really attracted to their mission and purpose of, really breaking through for mid-market companies in finance and, to really help them. And then the growth. And that's exciting.
Well, I think it sounds like you were certainly the missing piece Tipalti needed when it comes to puzzle pieces. As we're throwing around Tipalti, I know many of us have heard of this company, and I know it's a great place to work. I've stalked it on LinkedIn, if you will. But can you share in one quick sentence, what's the value that Tipalti brings to your customers?
So Topalti is a fintech company. So we do payments automation. So we do accounts payable, PO management, and payments, global partner payments. So we do payouts, right? And that's a big pain point for a lot of mid-market companies. Things are still being done on paper checks or manually, a lot of manual process. So the value we bring is we're freeing up your finance team so they can focus on strategic initiatives for the finance team while all the manual process are being taken out. right? And then on the payment side, it's hard. We're all global now. We're paying people all over the world, or we're vendors and whatnot, right? So how do you make that simple? So we do that, and you're able to pay out in many different currencies, lots of different, with finance, there's a lot of regulations. So we really help
It's
our
heavily
customers do
regulated.
that and make it really simple. Yeah.
I like simple. I remember, I think it was in the sixth grade when we were learning algebra, and my math teacher had given me this really important piece of advice, right? Like, keep it simple, silly, or keep it simple, stupid. And that's that KISS methodology, if you will. It's literally stuck with me in everything I do. If you've got to keep what you do simple. So Tipalti,
like those manual processes shouldn't be taking up all this time, because then if you have like your mid-market company and you have 4 people on your team, then it will feel like you have more people on your team. Yeah. So it's not about reduction, it's about adding value, right? So that's how we really add value. And we work with a lot of high growth companies. So, they get a lot of value, and then they're able to grow, right, as a result of that. So we really feel proud to work with customers like Noom and Roblox and, so many others, right, that they've seen immense growth as well. And we're happy to be part of that journey too.
I love it. I love it. But when I think about the industry you're in, I have to confess, right? There's probably no shortage of things keeping you awake at night, especially in such a regulated industry. It's changing so quickly. The past few years with the pandemic and everybody moving quickly over to digital, if they haven't yet, and you've just shared that there are some who haven't yet, right? So I can't imagine, there's just probably a lot. So I want to ask, our favorite question on the show. But Amisha, what is keeping you up at night professionally these days?
What is keeping, I think it's the same. I mean, if you ask all marketers, everyone's going to always say, oh, it's the numbers. That's fine. That's always the bar. But I think when we think about, we're still in a pandemic, right? Things are really uncertain. So it's when there's a time of uncertainty, right? Everyone's like, oh, double down on what's working. Let's see. I think we're going to go into a model, and I'm not going to say the new normal because that's overdone, but where we're going, right? We have to really be thoughtful. People are now accustomed to operating in a really different way. They're accustomed to being more digital. They're accustomed to having things being done remote, right? A lot of companies are looking at how people are working, where they're working, and then how customers are working and how you're able to meet them where they are, right? So it's more about that. And I think really, when people talk about customer experience and customer obsession, we really need to think about that. So what keeps me up at night is how and where do we meet the customer from the time they're a prospect all the way to becoming a customer. And then what is their experience with you really, right? Is it, from the time they sign on to learn software, right, to going live, then what's the experience there, right? Like, is there enough touch? Is there enough communication? Are they getting the value truly out of what they bought? Because sometimes people will buy, we have Oktopost. Are we getting the full value, right? I don't know all the full features, my team, right? So when you have something like that, if you're able to communicate and meet the customer where they are, and then say, here's how we can help you, right? Someone's invested in you, you can help them do their job better, right? Yeah. And their company succeed. And that's when I think about that whole thing. And that's what I think about. Say, from the time they're a prospect all the way through, are we meeting them where they're at versus, just talking about ourselves? We're trying to ram things down people's throats. I think it's digital, it's that experience. And are you meeting your customers where they are? I think those 3 things are things that I really think about.
It's tough. I think what's interesting when it comes to meeting your customers where they are, there's so many places they can be, especially today. And so, right, what data are you looking at? Where are you going? How many channels do you need to be engaged with? Is it one and you do it really well? Is it a ton and you do them mediocre? Where's the balance? How do you find that balance? There's a lot in it. How are some of the ways that you are kind of managing those different, I would say, I guess, what are some of the ways you're meeting customers where they are?
So just like everybody else, we know where our customers are, right? We know what their pain points are. We have a wonderful CFO, Sarah. And so she's one of the personas that we're always trying to reach out to. So we have that, right? So if you have somebody in-house that the persona you're reaching out to, that person or their team can be really great to bounce ideas off, to make sure you're being real. You do customer focus, right? Like you ask your customers, But really, when you're thinking about how do you meet them where they are, right? That's what your question is really, you can't boil the ocean. You can't say, oh my God, we're going to do it. And we're going to do the website. You have to build the blocks. Like, where is the best place? So look at your data, look at your campaigns and say, hey, where are the places where there are gaps in growth and we could be getting more growth? Where are the things that we're really excelling at and people are really responding to? So you double down on some of that messaging or that play or that channel, and then look at your other areas of possible growth. And if you're not meeting that growth area, what are you doing wrong there, right? And how are you doing that? And then do a lot of testing, right? So we do CRO testing on our all the time. We have things like Mutiny. We have a lot of different things to say, hey, let's test out messaging. Let's test out this experience. And then you're able to gather that and then take a look and say, okay, so this campaign did better because we did this kind of a flow. So that seems to work better for this persona, right? So you really have to think about it that way and make sure it's persona driven. Are you doing personalization in a real sense, right? And there's a million tools out there to help you. So don't get all tool crazy either, but pick like a few things and really focus. Don't try to boil the ocean. Like, do those few things really well. And then once you have those down, you can move on, you prioritize what has the most impact for your business now and prioritize that. Then you can move down, right? If you try to do everything, then you're going to do it, like you said, mediocre, and you're not going to really see an effect, right? Yeah. I mean, I always want to do everything like all at once, and that would, that would be crazy. My team would say, whoa, that's not humanly possible, right? And I think a lot of times people say, oh, you're scaling a team, you're in a growing company, you just grind. We don't want to grind people out, right? We don't want to grind also too much content out. So pick those high quality things and do them really well. And then once you have that down, you can create some rinse, wash, and repeat cycles, right? And then it allows you to work on the next thing. And then you have a build. So when you look back at the year, you can see like step one was, maybe the website messaging step and your PPC pages and all the messaging is clean and aligned and makes sense to your persona. And then are your campaigns the right flow, and do more ungated content versus gated up front, right? Just to get people engagement, right? It's not always, I know we're always like, oh my God, if we don't get the leads, like what's going to happen? But think about engagement, because not everyone is ready, right? But you want them to engage with you, right? So you should have, yes, I need to get business in the door. That's your top priority, but also have engagement as another thing, because I think people miss out. So if you look at those things, track engagement, track the data, and then you can come up with a plan and say, here's a prioritization. You need to do that prioritization. Otherwise it will fail.
I agree 1000% on that. Now, I want to take a moment and shift, because what's really interesting about having a guest like you on the show is the fact that you have literally sat in so many different marketing chairs and have worn so many different marketing hats. So I feel you're the perfect person to ask this question to, right? And my question to you is, where on earth should social media actually sit in an organization? Who do they need to report to? And what does it look like currently at Tipalti? Because the way I see it, it's socials everywhere in an organization.
Yeah, so every team will say, I need social for this. And everyone, a lot of companies everybody send it to the social person, you just pump it out. Like, it's just like a stream of like company news, product news, employee advocacy. It's just like it's like a fire hose, right? And I think if you look at companies that do it very well, it's not a fire hose, right? It's more of a curated, thoughtful, like, here's what we're going to put out. Here's the audience we're trying to build. This is the kind of content we need. Yes, we'll have news and things like that, but it's more curated experience. And I think social media is communications, it's external communications. So whatever you put there should be as thoughtful as what you're doing in PR, because once it's out there forever, right? So be cognizant. We live in a world where you want to be, is there implicit bias in it? Do make sure you're, it's, if you're writing about something, make sure you have all, you've thought about those things, right? But for us, it sits in communications, right? Okay. I think that, social media should either sit in a content team or in an external comms team, because it is external. You need people who know and understand the people that they're in the audience they're trying to build. Yeah. And then there's different channels, right? So like for business, really, it's LinkedIn, it's Twitter. A lot of people are like, oh, what about Instagram and TikTok. I think those are great also for employee advocacy, and you could do something fun, there. But I think if you're really trying to build your business, right, I think LinkedIn is probably where it's at right now for B2B. But B2C, you have a lot more channels and a lot more to play with. But that for me is really important because it is external facing. So you need somebody that understands, hey, this is what works, this company, and we can say all these things externally, and here's where we draw the line, right? I think it's important because you're the voice of the company externally. Yes. So for me, it's a more of a comms, right, function, but it is a cross-functional thing because everybody wants in on social, and there's a lot of pressure on that person. You get emails from everybody like, oh, I saw this article. Why are we doing, so there's always a lot of opinions.
Absolutely. I definitely think that's, one of the most fun pieces of being a social media manager is it's one of those roles that you literally get to know almost every single person in the organization because you're either running employee advocacy or people are requesting, from HR to get content up on the social channels. So it's a really fun role. And I think it's a great way to get to know people. And keep me honest, you said that in Tipalti that the social media management, the social media sits under the external comms, correct?
Yeah, this is under communications and PR, right? Because it is an external role. You are, whether it's news or you're building a campaign. And oh, by the way, we are hiring. We have a new head of comms, so it's a new pillar we're building out. We internally, and we're looking for a social media and influencer lead. So if anyone's interested, please contact me.
And Topalti is a great place to work. I can definitely vouch for that. And if you get to work alongside Amisha, I mean that just sells it right there. Okay, so with external comms, what's interesting, I've actually heard a lot of pushback about this kind of fear that a lot of organizations seem to use social as like a PR channel, and something that they have to keep in mind is it's not just a PR channel. Do you find that that's ever a struggle, or do you think that in 2022 people get that?
I think it's still a struggle. It depends the company you're at, what their feeling is. I think, like I said, a lot of companies are like, oh, it's just like, it's like a spam channel, right? And I think we really need to step back and think, and you need to invest in it, right? And say we need, to create mini campaigns, right? That are going to engage. I think social media is about engagement, and getting interest, getting brand awareness, putting your voice out there, and becoming, it shows your thought leadership, whether it's to attract employees to, explain and, kind of showcase your employee experience. It's a place where you can educate people, right? Or create really high value content that's appealing to your audience, right? So for our audience, I'm not trying to appeal like to my mom or to like my neighbors or to everyone, right? I'm not Dove Soap. I'm trying to appeal to a certain, finance audience, to a certain audience in, like creator economy, gig economy platforms, where I'm trying to appeal to those folks. So, what are they interested in, right? And that's again about meeting people where they're at, what they're looking for. And I just don't want to hit them over the head with Tipalti is, right? We want to do that, but hey, have customers on there and let customers talk about their companies and their growth. And they don't even have to, I know people don't, they don't have to talk about your product. And that's like the shift that we're making also, right? Because we want to become value, right? It's providing value and getting engagement, and allows you to build your audience. And once you do those things, all the other stuff comes with it too, right? The leads and interest and all of that will come. People are sharing it out because they're like, wow, they really know what they're doing and they're really experts in this field. And they may not be thinking about us today, but tomorrow they have a need. Now it's like, oh, you know what? I should really, because they're really knowledgeable. They seem like they have their they really know what they're talking about. And they seem to be engaging with all the right people in the industry and they're well thought of. I'm going to now check them out, right? So you want to create that. Which is hard to do.
I love how you just called that out, because so much about social, it's so not about being a megaphone, yet it's so easy to fall into that trap to be that megaphone. And it is truly all about engagement. I want to shift for a moment, because I know something you're known for is the passion that you instill in your team. And when you're building out campaigns and the creativity, it's really something in the industry that everybody has their eyes on you. And almost all brand building activities are indeed, right, centered around increasing awareness. And you have a really unique background And I'm just, thinking out loud, what have been some of Tipalti's most interesting or successful or unique creative campaigns, in your opinion, that have actually driven that awareness and value? Could you share with us, some of the cool things that have happened at Tipalti lately?
Sure. So last year we did our first brand media campaign, and we have we had a creative director on board, Eric, and he's terrific. He came from Salesforce and a lot of like agency experience. So really, bringing someone like that on. We have our head of content, Derek, and they did a great job. But it's more about, what's the message we wanted to do. So we did a spring campaign, we did some testing, and we said okay. And then in the fall we also did some out of home, right? So we want to create something eye catching, but a message that resonates. So based on the testing from before, in the fall, our campaign had a lot more directive sort of, messaging, but it was a little bit more fun, but it really spoke to, the persona was more, it was like using bright, bold colors and very clean. And so when you're walking by, you can get it really fast and it's eye catching, right? So I think, it was doing that. We also did a brand purpose exercise during all of this, because it was really, it's, yes, we know what our business is and what we do, but from the customer viewpoint, right? And then, your brand purpose is something that lasts for a very long time. It's why you exist. And that doesn't really change too much. Like your branding may change, your slogan may change, but it's an overarching sort of umbrella that you create. So, once we did that, then it's like everything falls under that, but it's not an external message we would use, right? So, for us, our brand purpose is really about, we free finance to lead modern business, right? Because we're freeing people from manual and we're giving them into, allowing them to be more strategic. So that speaks to that. And that no matter where we go, where we grow, that is what our purpose is, right? And then for, if you want to think about external messaging, right? On our website, we put, we transform finance, right? We transform your finance team, or we help you, we transform finance so you can do X, Y, and Z in these ways, right? So then it becomes, you're transforming, right? You're transforming a function, you're helping a customer move their business along, right? So to be more modern and to do these things, right? So then it starts making sense. And then you have to test it, right? To say, is this meeting our audience? Does it make sense? Is it too much, right? Because the finance audience is different than us marketers. We're like, oh, wow, it's pretty. You're like, oh, that's really cool. We always like all the cool stuff. We like that, right? We're marketers. So we're always like, oh, that's, we have that energy. And I think, the CIO, the CEO, everyone has a different, what gets them excited, what they're really looking for to help them do their job better, right? So that's how we want to really resonate. So the brand media campaign was very creative and bold and really clean. And part of that, they created 3D video, right? That was really cool. We found a really good voiceover actor, and it was just very well received. And so we found the video worked really well, right? So that was really great. So that helps us as we move through our journey. So we did brand purpose. We did some very exciting brand media. We had our first user conference, Illuminate, and that was a lot of fun for branding and a campaign purpose. We blew out the doors on, 60% over, our attendance expectations, but we came up with a lot of really good thought leadership content. And we had our keynote speakers like Venus Williams. So we really went all out, but we also brought in external speakers. We also brought in our customers, and we didn't just talk about our product. One of the tracks is purely just all thought leadership and issues and trends that people are seeing. And so when you have that kind of content, right, and that kind of creativity, then that allows you to create engagement, but there's also that other sales piece. And then when someone's actually talking to prospect, they have these other things, and it's like hitting people over the head, right? It's a good experience you're inviting them to. So we created that experience. And I think lastly was this integrated campaign we did for IPO. So, what should you think about if you're thinking about going IPO? And we actually integrated some influencer videos. We had some really great curated content and an ebook, but it was all, kind of journey map, but we did a landing page so you could choose. And then you have the email campaign, and you can create a PPC page. So it kind of feeds into this one-stop shop, but it then becomes evergreen. So then you can add to it, right? We're going to add another level to it and a different pieces of content this year. So it allows your campaigns to grow, but it's integrated. So we had social behind it. We
Uh,
had, content and, PR. So it was all together. And so when you launch something like that, it's not just like boom, it's kind of a cycle and it lasts for a long time. So we launched it last year, I think in Q2, and it's still a living, breathing thing. We're going to iterate on it this year, right? But we also brought in influencers. We also brought in customers. So it becomes more rich. So I went on for too long because our team did an amazing job.
Well,
So
congratulations.
lots of good things to talk, but a lot of creativity was from everything from design to social to the campaign email, like everything, right? You really, it was mapped out by the entire, and everybody on the team had a hand in it. Every single person.
I love it.
So that
And
was a pretty incredible.
It goes back, friends, to what you opened the show with basically saying that, the pieces of the puzzle need to come together. And it just proves that when you're running these types of programs and campaigns, every piece of the puzzle matters, no matter how big or small it is, to make these programs continue to be successful, to live and breathe, quarter over quarter, year over year. And the other thing I wanted to just point out, when you mentioned the user groups, it was a breath of fresh air to hear you say that when you're running that, letting your customers speak and not even focusing on product, but solely thought leadership, because I think that that's so important and oftentimes overlooked by B2B marketers, because again, it is so easy to fall into the trap of being that megaphone. But what Tipalti is doing by bringing your customers together, letting them speak, take the lead. I mean, it definitely requires a little bit of, I would say, calculated risk or extreme trust, right? To be able to kind of step back and let them do that talking. But you learn so much, and that community of thought leaders that come together, that's priceless. I mean, I'm impressed by that.
We launched a customer community last year, and it's been doing really well. And I think it's, customers can talk to each other, it could be career, it could be lots of different things. It's not just like, but also it gives us a place to say here's how you maximize the investment you've made, right? It's not costing you anything, but it also allows us to educate and update. But then on the flip side, right, what you're talking about, thought leadership, the thought leadership, we all like to say tofu, mofu, bofu, like we love those words, right? My dad for a long time was like, why are you always talking about tofu? He's like, I thought you didn't like tofu. I'm like, no, Dad, we're not talking about food. We're talking about work. So, it's, I have to say that we all know the acronym. We all can, us as marketers, right? But when you think about social, it's part of the whole journey. It's not just like top funnel content. You can put out other engaging pieces of content. You can and should highlight when your customer goes public, when your customer is being recognized. Put that out there, because you should be celebrating with your customer, right? No matter what you're doing with their company, you want to lift them up, right? So I think when you think about social, people just think about like, oh, top funnel. Well, think about your social also as, how can that help along the journey, right? And then certainly you have paid social, right? Because that's on the,
Can't forget about paid.
in your demand gen side. How do you connect all of that together? Because then they can come back and say, hey, these things are actually working the best, right? Yeah. That can help you, right? And you can help, both sides of the coin, right? And then you start getting a little bit more synergy. And then think about, hey, once somebody, you have the prospect sort of stuff, right? But then when you throw things over the transom, even on social, your customers now, is there something you could be doing on social, right? To be engaging that group, right? So it's something to think about. I think people just think about social as like, okay, let's just get it out and it's top funnel and it's all thought leadership. It's all this, you have to have a variety, and we're actually working on improving that, right? That's why we want to hire someone, bring somebody that has in-house expertise, right? Not just, having, an agency or that kind of model. We really want to bring that, and then the influencer piece, because relationships are important in social. So if you're creating online relationships, you're highlighting and recognizing experts, they're going to be recognizing you as well. If you have that kind of, hey, that's a really, the 7 things people should be thinking about in finance for 2022. And it's not like, oh, because it's like problem, oh, here's Topalti solution, right? If it's, we actually have like, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here's why they're important. And we're not talking about product. Yes, of course we have a product and a logo and a little bit on the bottom, right? Like to, don't forget. But you have that and that content, then someone will say, you know what, I think my audience will like that because it's got some value to it. And then you're giving them content, right? Because everyone is always like, I need content, right? It's hard to fill it in. If you provide these like high value things on social, others will do that. And the other thing is like tagging and hash, like to figure out what's your strategy of building in what area.
Yeah.
Right? I think people forget that. So
agreed. And I love the passion, like the you're so vivacious and so just enthusiastic about this topic, but there's just so much to talk about. I wish we had so much more time than just 30 minutes on this show, because everything that you just shared about the little things, when it comes to social, like, don't forget to mention or tag, or these little things that I think you take for granted when you work in social, but they do make a big difference. And knowing how and when to use them, and which communities to engage with, it's such, I guess maybe this is like the next question, right? But like, is it an art or a science, right? When it comes to marketing, and you mentioned you have both sides, right?
Both. Because I think sometimes we're like data, like, oh, it's only based on data. I'm like, there's also an art. There's also a feeling you're trying to evoke, right? So we're, on the journey to becoming more emotional. I'm really excited to be at Tipalti, because we're all on a journey together, right? Of building something and growing something, but also, how are we communicating? Are we doing the right things? Are we highlighting, is our employee experience coming through, right? Like, all of those things. When people think about these things, they're like, oh, let's do big campaigns and that's what's going to move the needle. Yes, those things help, and those are pops, but it's really what you do day to day, right? It's almost like you said, like, the little things add up.
Yep.
Right. So if you are, a lot of people think like, oh my God, you have to, like, so much money, just dump it all in. No, you create, that's where creativity comes in. And that's where you see some of these things where, like, wow. And it's just, people are sharing it and everyone's like, let's get viral. I'm like, maybe you don't want to always be viral, because it's not always a good thing, right? But if you're going to be viral to your audience, or, if you are just creating engagement, and you're creating a lot of, engagement, and it's kind of snowballing over time, that to me is like the long lasting staying power.
Yeah.
You can have one amazing thing and then it's like, boom, and you'll have this huge spike, right? And then it comes right back down. What if you built? And that's when you do the build and the engagement. That's when you actually get to the place where you see others and you're like, wow, how did they get there? It's not that some of these brands are like, oh, now we're famous over. No, there was a build, and there was a lot of things that they had put into it, right?
Yeah.
So, I think people should think about
that. Yeah. It certainly takes time. That's the other thing, right? Our society today, I feel we love fast wins. We love
the one-hit wonder, like, boom, right? Yeah.
So totally. So listen, the next question I have is more leaning towards you as a leader. And I hope this question isn't too much of a curveball, but I'm going to throw it at you anyway. With everything that you've accomplished, no pressure. With everything that you've accomplished, and we're in the beginning of 2022 Q1, what expectations do you have of yourself as a marketing leader for the next few quarters in 2022?
I think for me, and when I look at it, when you're a leader and you're looking at your team, you really want to create an environment where people, it's right now, it's hard, right? Because we're still at home. There's a lot going on. People have a lot of different situations. I think, empathetic, compassionate, and really thinking about everyone is really truly bringing their whole, we used to talk about bring your whole self. People are bringing their whole selves to work. So for me, it's like making sure, how do we get the work-life balance under, how do we help people? How do we create some level of like team camaraderie and that environment where people feel like they can come and create and thrive and learn? I think, culture of learning is really important, because that's how you get productivity. Something we have in our team is, providing that space. So, twice a week we have this, GST, get shit done time, that we put on everybody's calendars.
Wow, I love that.
Meetings, you cannot make meetings during those two times, right? We knew we were never going to get a full day, but it was, it's kind of, these 2-3 hour blocks, and people do use that, and it allows your team to feel like, oh, and then they can also say, well, I have a meeting and Amisha put on my calendar. So it empowers your team to be more productive, right? But then you're creating that environment, and then also asking for a lot of feedback, right? And being open to feedback and learning from that feedback. To me, creating that team environment, team engagement, it's really important right now, because that experience, right? And when you're thrilled and you're delighted to come to work, right? Like you're not gonna like every piece of your job, nobody is, right? But when you can create that kind of
I don't remember where I once read, I need to get the source for this, but there was like there's always in every job a 20% suckage factor. And once you accept that, you love your job. But I have to find
there always is. No, that's funny, but there's not going to be everything, right? And so it's, the things, right? So making that kind of environment where people feel like they can build a career versus this is a job is important to me, right? Especially if people are ambitious and, we're in this crazy time, right? But people still want to feel growth. They want to feel valued, right? The work is also really important, but if you don't create that, I think the work will suffer, right? I think you really need to think about those things as a leader. And if you create that culture of environment of growth and learning and openness and transparency, right? And collaboration, then you're going to get a team that's cohesive and not siloed, and make sure if you see things aren't open for your team, you do it, right? And you create the dialogues for your team so people can move forward, right? And continue that, right? So that's what I, try to keep things not as siloed, and then because we're scaling fast and that can happen really easily. Right?
The growing pains.
So and then that culture, right, of collaboration, because one of the reasons I joined Tipalti was, there's this really great culture of collaboration, openness, and transparency. It's a GST culture. It's also a no BS culture, and they're very humble leadership. So we look for that because, there's no egos here. It's more about the work and building something together, right? We want to keep that, because that to me is why I come to work every day. And I don't want to, I want everyone to feel that way, right? So you have good days and bad days, but if you can create that, I think that's really important to me.
I love hearing that. And I think I said it at the beginning, I'll say it again. Tipalti sounds like a fantastic place to be. And especially right now with all the growth, and it's incredible. So my last question for today's episode, and I have to say, I have a hunch this is going to be a fan favorite episode. We're probably going to have you back. There's a lot more to talk about, Amisha. But for now, I was hoping you might be able to share with me, what is one thing, we were talking a lot about social media. What's one thing that you can share with us right now that we cannot learn from your LinkedIn profile about you?
Learn. I used to do theater.
So. What kind of theater? Let's take it a little further.
Drama. Mostly drama. On stage. I've done it in New York when I was a lot younger. So
really,
in school, I spent a summer in New York doing theater. I did Shakespeare in the Park.
I love Shakespeare in the Park.
Central Park, and that was a really great experience. And then also in college, I studied that, so I did a lot of theater. Then I did some community theater after school as well. So but I think that nobody believes me that I was very painfully shy, and so theater is you're playing somebody else, right? And you get to step in somebody else's shoes, which is why I think I love marketing, because we step into other people's shoes to see and how we can help them communicate. So I always think of things as like skits in my head and things like that. So, and that plays out in marketing stuff. But yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't know. Whereas my husband says, I have a degree in drama, as they say.
I love it. So Amisha, anyone listening in, they want to join the Topalti team. They want to pick your brain a little bit more about all things marketing. Where is the best place for somebody to reach you?
You can reach me on LinkedIn, just Amisha Ghandi. I'm there. And then, go to the Tipalti careers page, and then, let us know if you're interested. We have a lot of open positions, but we are looking, for a great social influencer lead. So, and then if you just want to have a conversation, if you have great ideas and you want to share, because I always love it to learn from others as well.
Amazing. Amisha, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Radically Transparent podcast, brought to you by Oktopost, the only social media management and employee advocacy platform architected for B2B. I'm Jennifer Gutman, your host and director of social strategy here at Oktopost. And if you love today's show, we'd love if you subscribe, rate, and give a raving review wherever you get your podcasts. For more discussion on B2B social media marketing, be sure to follow Oktopost on LinkedIn. And of course, to gain access to all our free social media marketing and employee advocacy resources, head on over to our website, www.oktopost.com. Until next time.